ash, some of it cigar ash. There was no cigar butt, and no band or cellophane wrapper. The fire on the hearth had burned out and the ashes were cold. They were not all wood ashes. A considerable amount of paper, no, cardboard, had been burned there also. Poking gently with the point of a sword he took from a rack, Rand discovered that what had been burned had been a number of cards, about 6 inches by 4, one of which had, somehow, managed to escape the flames, with nothing more than a charred edge. Improvising tweezers from a pipe cleaner, he picked this up and looked at it. It had been typewritten. 4850. English screw barrel, FL pocket pistol. Queen Anne type, side hammer with pen attached to barrel, steel barrel and frame. Marked, Wilson, Minories, London. Silver mask butt cap, hallmarked for 1723. 4.5-inch barrel, 9 1/4 inch, OA. Cow, about 44. Taken in trade, 3/21/38 from V. Sparling for Kentuck, number 2538, along with 4851, 4852, 4853. Approximate cost, RLSS, replacement, due, NLSS, OSSS, LSSS. To this had been added in pen, sold R. Kingsley, St. Louis, Missouri, mail order, 12/20/42, OSSS. Rand laid the card on the cocktail table along with the drinking equipment. At least he knew what had gone into the fire. Arnold Rivers' card index purchase and sales record. He doubted very strongly if that would have been burned while its owner was still alive. Going over to the desk, he checked. The drawer from which he had seen Cecil Gillis get the card for the Leech & Rigdon had been cleaned out. Picking up the phone in an awkward, unnatural manner, he used a pencil from his pocket to dial a number with which he was familiar, a number that meant the same thing on any telephone exchange in the state. "State Police, Corporal Kavaleen," a voice sing-songed out the receiver. "My name is Rand," he identified himself. "I am calling from Arnold Rivers' Antique Arms Shop on Route 19, about a mile and a half east of Rosemont. I am reporting a homicide." "Yeah, go ahead. Hey, did you say homicide?" the other voice asked sharply. "Who?" "Rivers himself. I called at his shop a few minutes ago, found the front door open, and walked in. I found Rivers lying dead on the floor just inside the door. He had been killed with a Mauser rifle. Not shot, clubbed with the butt, and bayoneted. The body is cold, beginning to stiffen. A pool of blood on the floor is almost completely dried." "That's a good report, mister," the corporal approved. "You stick around, we'll be right along. You haven't touched anything, have you?" "Not around the body. How long will it take you to get here?" "About 10 minutes. I'll tell Sergeant McKenna right away." Rand hung up and glanced at his watch. 10:22. He gave himself 7 minutes and went around the room rapidly, looking only at pistols. He saw nothing that might have come from the Fleming collection. Finally, he opened the front door just as a white state police car was pulling up at the end of the walk. Sergeant Ignatius Loyola McKenna, customarily known and addressed as Mick, piled out almost before it had stopped. The driver, a stocky blue-eyed Finn with a corporal's chevrons, followed him, and 2 privates got out from behind, dragging after them a box about the size and shape of an army footlocker. McKenna was halfway up the drive before he recognized Rand, then he stopped short. "Well, Jesus me beads!" He turned suddenly to the corporal. "My God, Arvo! You said his name was Grant!" "That's what I thought he said." Rand recognized the sing-song accent he had heard on the phone. "You know him?" "Know him?" McKenna stepped aside quickly to avoid being overrun by his 2 privates with the equipment box. He sighed resignedly. "Arvo, this is the notorious Jefferson Davis Rand, Tri-State Agency in New Belfast." He gestured towards the Finn. "Corporal Arvo Kavaleen," he introduced, "and Privates Skinner and Jameson." "Well, where is it?" "Right inside." Rand stepped backward, gesturing them in. "Careful, it's just inside the doorway." McKenna and the corporal entered. The two privates set down their box outside and followed. They all drew up in a semicircle around the late Arnold Rivers and looked at him critically. "Jesus!" Cavalier pronounced the J sound as though it were ZH. He gave all his syllables an equally accented intonation. "Say, somebody gave him a good job. Somebody's been seeing too many war movies." McKenna got a cigarette out of his tunic pocket and lit it in Rand's pipe bowl. "Want to confess now, or do you insist on a third degree with all the trimmings?" Cavalier looked wide-eyed at Rand, then at McKenna, and then back at Rand. Rand laughed. "Now, Mick," he reproved, "you know I never kill anybody unless I have a clear case of self-defense and a flock of witnesses to back it up." McKenna nodded and reassured his corporal. "That's right, Arvo. When Jeff Rand kills anybody, it's always self-defense. And he doesn't generally make messes like this." He gave the body a brief scrutiny, then turned to Rand. "You looked around, of course. What do you make of it?" "Last night sometime," Rand reconstructed, "Rivers had a visitor, a man who smoked cigars. He and Rivers were on friendly, or at least sociable, terms. They sat back there by the fire for some time, smoking and drinking. The shades were all drawn. I don't know whether that was standard procedure, or because this conference was something clandestine. Finally, Rivers' visitor got up to leave. Now, of course, he could have left, and somebody else could have come here later, been admitted, and killed Rivers. That's a possibility," Rand said. "But it's also an assumption without anything to support it. I rather like the idea that the man who sat back there drinking and smoking with Rivers was the killer. If so, Rivers must have gone with him to the door and was about to open it when this fellow picked up that rifle, probably from that rack over there, and clipped him on the jaw with the butt. Then he gave him the point 3 times, the second and third probably while Rivers was down. Then he swung it up and slammed down with it, and left it sticking through Rivers and the floor." McKenna nodded. "Lights on when you got here?" he asked. "No, I put them on when I came in. The killer must have turned them off when he left, but the deadlatch on the door wasn't set, and he doesn't seem to have bothered checking on that." "Think he left right after he killed Rivers?" Rand shook his head. "No, that was just the first part of it. After he'd finished Rivers, he went back to that desk and got all the cards Rivers used to record his transactions on, an individual card for every item. He destroyed the lot of them, or at least most of them, in the fireplace. Now, I'm only guessing here, but I think he took out a card, or cards, in which he had some interest, and then dumped the rest in the fire to prevent anybody from being able to determine which ones he was interested in. I'm further guessing that the cards which the killer wanted to suppress were in the sold file. But I'm not guessing about the destruction of the record file. I found the fireplace full of ashes. Found one card that had escaped unburned. You can be sure that one wasn't important. And found the drawer where the record system was kept, empty." "Think he might have stolen something and covered up by burning the cards?" McKenna asked. Rand shook his head again. "I was here yesterday, bought a pistol from Rivers. That's how I noticed this card index system. Of course, I didn't look at everything while I was here, but I can't see where any quantity of arms have been removed, and Rivers didn't have any single item that was worth a murder. Fact is, no old firearm is. There are only a very few old arms that are worth over $1,000, and most of them are well known, unique specimens that would be unsaleable because every collector would know where it came from. We can check possible thefts with Rivers' clerk when he gets here," McKenna said. "Now, suppose you show me these things you found back at the rear. Arvo, you and the boys start taking pictures," he told the corporal, then he followed Rand back through the shop. He tested the temperature of the water in the ice bowl with his finger. He looked at the ashtray and bent over and sniffed at each of the 2 glasses. "I see one of them's been emptied out," he commented. "Want to bet it hasn't been wiped clean, too?" "Uh-uh," Rand smiled slightly. "Even the tiny tots wipe off the cookie jar after they've raided it," he said. A flashbulb lit the front of the shop briefly. Corporal Cavalier said something to the others. McKenna picked up the card Rand had found by the edges and looked at it. "What in the hell's this all about, Jeff?" he asked.